Welcome to the Everything Podcast, and in this episode, I'm going to be recapping the Sontarans versus Rutans range from Big Finish, which was released between January and April 2024. But before I do talk about that more and show the trailers and obviously spoil it and recap it, I'm recording this episode on the 20th of February 2026. And yeah, as I say, in this episode, I'm going to be recapping Sontarans versus Rutans, which kind of is the inspiration behind and the success of it that led to the recently announced Rutans versus Sontarans range, which will be released monthly from April to July 2026, which I've talked about in a previous episode. So go and watch or listen to that episode if you haven't already. But back to Sontarans versus Rutans, I'm going to start off with Sontarans versus Rutans, the Battle of Giants Causeway, which was released in January 2024. And I should mention, before I get to the synopsis and the cast, that unlike some like the Doctor ranges or stuff like that, it's a different Doctor in each episode. So it makes for interesting. But yeah, so we start off with the synopsis for the Battle of Giants Causeway. The war between the Sontarans and the Rutans have been going on for millennia and is likely to continue for millennia more. A terrible conflict with no care for consequences or collateral damage. Damage. Where am I up to? Billions have died with no end in sight. Its reach can encompass ancient Ireland and a forest world in the far future. A temporal tidal wave leads the Doctor, Charlie, and Chris to the Giants Causeway Island 55 BC. Where the TARDIS drains of power and they encounter Sontarans who believe they're Roman legionnaires. What has caused this and what is the strange secret in the rocks? This episode was recorded on the 3rd of May 2023 and stars Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, India Fisher as Charlie Pollard, Conrad Westmus as Chris, as well as multiple other actors as the Sontarans, including, of course, Dan Starkey. So before I do spoil the events of Sontarans vs. Rutans, the Battle of Giants Causeway, here's the trailer.
Keris?
Coming! Now this is Deja Vu.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Sontarans vs. Rutans, the Battle of Giants Causeway.
We have gone a long way back. Earth. Ireland, to be exact.
This is the Giant's Causeway.
You can't do anything. The TARDIS is dead.
Doctor, these stone shapes, they're all...
hexagons. Layers and layers of hexagons in columns that are humming.
You're a death demon.
Sontarans. Sontarans? Aliens?
Not just aliens. A clone army.
The warriors from the war beyond the stars.
Oh, this is ridiculous. They've built an entire Roman camp.
You saw lights. On the rocks.
The mist lit up like crackling fire.
Possibly. But Sontarans and Rutans plucked out of time and thrown together in one place is too much of a coincidence.
The ground, it shakes.
They are coming!
Kill them!
Deja vu all over again.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
So that was the trailer for Sontarans versus Rutans, the Battle of Giants Causeway, which, as I mentioned before, was released all the way back in January 2024, so over 2 years. So this is going to be a bit patchy, but kind of within that trailer, we even found out that Paul McGann's 8th Doctor comes face to face with the Sontarans, who obviously he didn't get to face on TV in his one episode, well, in the TV movie. So not necessarily one episode, but one story. When he faces the Master, so he didn't get all of the rest of his stories have been audio. So Paul McGann's 8th Doctor is considered like the Big Finish Doctor, really. But yeah, kind of, I remember really enjoying this and kind of really sets up Sontarans versus Rutans, as I mentioned before, with each episode featuring a different Doctor. It is interesting to see how they would weave it all in. But obviously, I will talk about that as the episode continues. So obviously, this first episode featured the Eighth Doctor. We now go into the second episode of Sontarans versus Rutans, which was titled "The Children of the Future," which was released 1 month later. Guess what? In February 2024, and has the following synopsis. The war between the Sontarans and the Rutans has been going on for millennia and is likely to continue for millennia more. A terrible conflict with no care for consequences or collateral damage. Billions have died with no end in sight. The Brigadier is used to the Doctor acting strangely, but this time there's something decidedly different about the whole affair. As he looks into the Time Lord's odd activities outside of unit, there's a mystery that takes Lethbridge Stewart to a site very familiar to Sarah Jane Smith. Can the Brigadier trust his old friend? Who are his mysterious new allies, and is the future of humanity really at stake? A Sontaran threat could spell the end of their long-standing friendship and the entire planet. This episode was recorded on the 17th of May 2023 and written by Tim Foley, and stars Tim Treloar as the Third Doctor, as well as Sadie Miller as Sarah Jane Smith and John Coleshaw as Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. So before I do spoil the events of Sontarans versus Rutans, the Children of the Future, here's the trailer.
The tale we have to tell is quite an extraordinary one.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Sontarans versus Rutans, the Children of the Future.
There's much to prepare for tonight.
So, what's all this about?
Remember those missing scientists back when we first met?
Halt! This area is off limits.
They were brought to a castle not far from here, captured by Lynx, the Sontaran.
So you think that's where the Doctor's headed? Returning to the scene of the crime, so to speak.
I don't want either of you knowing too much about Earth's future. But what you need to know is that these people are survivors from a Sontaran invasion of Earth.
Maybe this is future history.
The Cascade Project.
A wound in reality.
It was carnage.
You admit there's something going on with the Doctor. Something odd.
If these Rutans can take any form.
Cunning shapeshifters.
Well, Sarah, just what are we going to do with you?
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
That was the trailer for Sontarans versus Rutans, the Children of the Future, which obviously features the Third Doctor in this episode, but not the Third Doctor as we know him, because he seems to be mind controlled or something. And this is one of the Rutan heavy episodes from this series of Sontarans versus Rutans. Obviously, Battle of Giants Causeway, following focusing more on Battle of Giants Causeway. But yeah, kind of it's very what's the word? A very different episode of Sontarans versus Rutans, which is kind of what this series is about, because obviously, especially the Third Doctor box sets, Adventures box sets, they tend to have only one story in them, and obviously this is one story across 4 different episodes from 4 different eras of Doctor Who as well. So it is very interesting. So now let's move on to episode 3 of Sontarans versus Rutans, which was released in March 2024, titled Born to Die, and written by Tegan Byrne, and it has this synopsis. The war between the Sontarans and Rutans have been going on for millennia and is likely to continue for millennia more. A terrible conflict with no care for consequences or collateral damage. Billions have died with no end in sight. Its reach can encompass ancient island and a forest world in the far future. Encounters with unit and a Doctor no more. From the outside, these battles might seem disconnected, but sometimes there is a common thread, and unpicking that can destroy everything. When a trip to the Plantic Taxdoon goes wrong, the Doctor finds himself with mere hours to prove himself innocent of murdering a Sontaran. As more die, the Doctor and Charlie need to uncover the cause and why the Sontarans are even on this planet if they have time. This episode was recorded on the 30th of May 2023 and stars Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor and India Fisher as Charlie Pollard. So before I do spoil the events of Sontarans versus Rutans Born to Die, here's the trailer.
Hexadon. Isn't she a beauty?
She's certainly very peaceful.
It's home to the Nox. A fascinating species.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Sontarans versus Rutans, Born to Die.
The Nox have abnormal genetic coding, very malleable. People have been trying to uncover their secrets for centuries. They evolved a great aptitude for concealment.
Products. Name is Products.
That sounds like someone in pain.
If our mission is completed effectively, we will return as heroes.
What on earth are Sontarans doing here? You have killed a Sontaran. You must be executed immediately. Oh, not again. Activate weapons! Virus? Airborne infection? Turning Sontarans feral? Fire on my command!
The enemy will be destroyed.
I promised Crodox I'd save them.
We need to get out of here. Run! Big Finish. For the love of stories.
Excellent. A new dawn approaches.
That was the trailer for Sontarans vs. Rutans Born Today, which was released in March 2024 and stars Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor and India Fisher's Charlie Pollard. Obviously, Charlie, normally a companion of the Eighth Doctor, as we talked about earlier in the episode, but now travelling with the Sixth Doctor, which obviously makes things interesting because she's met a future incarnation, so can't spoil too much, even knowing who the Sontarans are in this episode, but or knowing about the Sontarans and just having to play dumb to the Doctor a little bit. But yeah, kind of this is another one of the Sontaran heavy episodes of Sontarans versus Rutans. But yeah, it does include obviously Sontarans and war and kind of the Doctor have to prove his innocence and he didn't kill a Sontaran, which obviously we know, but it has to be proven throughout the episode. I should have mentioned that all of the episodes of Sontarans vs. Rutans are about an hour long, so that gives it a bit longer. It's not like half an hour episodes like the classic series was, so it is operate a little bit differently, but basically told kind of as a new series would do, with kind of that kind of theme of having longer episodes and things like that, but and it only being one part hour long stories instead of it would be two part stories if it was from the classic series to be around that hour mark. But anyway, yeah, they kind of really enjoyed this story as well. I think all the Sontarans vs. Rutans episodes are really good, and that leads us on to the finale of Sontarans vs. Rutans episode 4, titled In Name Only. Which takes us again to a fourth era of Doctor Who, all different eras. Obviously, we have the third, sixth, and eighth Doctors already appear. I'll get on to which Doctor this episode focuses on. But In Name Only was released in April 2024 and written by John Dorney, with the following synopsis. In the depths of the Time War, a Rutan attack on a Time Lord facility leads to Gallifrey declaring a vicious reprisal. But not all Time Lords support the action. One thinks there's more to the situation than meets the eye, and this Time Lord was once called the Doctor. This episode was recorded on the 7th of June, 2023, and stars Jonathan Carley as the War Doctor, as well as Christopher Ryan and Dan Starkey as multiple Sontarans. And as I said, this is the finale of Sontarans vs. Rutans, so before I do spoil it, here's the trailer.
Shoot on my order! Ready weapons!
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Sontarans vs. Rutans, in name only.
This station is impinging on Rutan territory. This must not be tolerated.
We cannot fight a war on two fronts.
I am long past my pacifist ways.
If the Rutan host has declared against us as well, then we're put in a precarious position.
All Gallifreyans must die.
I propose that we send a message.
Every day. I think my people can't stoop any lower.
end yet.
I propose that we destroy Router 3.
A perfect grandfather paradox. I've been having nightmares.
We are fighting a war beyond reality. We all have nightmares.
Visions, then, of our world torn apart. This is a collapse of time.
Big finish. For the love of stories.
You play a dangerous game, Time Lord, but in that, you are not alone.
That was the trailer for Sontarans vs. Rutans in name only, which kind of focuses on both Sontarans vs. Rutans, as it's the finale of Sontarans vs. Rutans. And I've now said that phrase way too many times in the space of 30 seconds. But yeah, obviously this episode focuses on Jonathan Carley's War Doctor, obviously originally portrayed by John Hurt on TV, and then did some Big Finish audios as well, but unfortunately no longer with us, hence why Jonathan Carley is now the War Doctor. But yeah, this episode kind of wraps up Sontarans versus Rutans right well, and obviously the War Doctor is a very interesting incarnation of the Doctor because he doesn't have some of the limits that the other incarnations have of not killing and things like that. The War Doctor obviously is a doctor of war, and kind of has a very different philosophy as he mentions in that trailer. But yeah, this was a really good series. So if you haven't already, I would suggest checking out Sontarans versus Rutans. But Sontarans versus Rutans has finished. But we then jump to a couple of weeks ago, a week ago, I think, from as time of recording, obviously significantly longer. When you're watching these episodes, listening to this episode, and for the first episode that I'll get to what I'm talking about in a second. But yeah, kind of has already been released by the time you're listening to this episode. Certainly watching, not so sure, but yeah, it's just very. There's obviously podcast time might be one of the downfalls. Well, the only downfall of recording episodes in advance is I obviously don't have the up-to-date information that you have. So that is kind of the follow-up. Titled Rutans versus Sontarans, obviously more focus on Rutans in these episodes. And the first episode in that series is Betrayal at the House of Sontar, which is being released on the 2nd of April 2026, written by John Dorney, with the following synopsis. There are many stories of the Sontaran-Rutan War, but one hidden thread has yet to be revealed. A tale told across millennia from before the war to its possible end, as the Doctor is about to discover. On the run from the mysterious organisation called Division, the Doctor has come to the planet Sontar, home of the Covertech Empire and their armed forces, the Sontarans. She wants entrance. She's offering the secrets of the Time Lords in exchange, but with the whole of time and space up for grabs are high, can everyone on Sontar be trusted? This episode was recorded on the 24th of September 2025 and stars Joe Martin as the fugitive Doctor. So yes, we're now getting a Rutans versus Sontarans episode, and the first episode, obviously starring Joe Martin's fugitive Doctor, which I've mentioned when I talked about the announcement, and I think I mentioned it in the fugitive Doctor recap as well. But kind of, it's nice to have an episode that focuses on this incarnation that we don't know much about, similar to the War Doctor, which I just talked about in the name only section. For the finale of Sontarans versus Rutans, that kind of it's nice to have more stories featuring all the incarnations of the Doctor. Great stories, especially as I've mentioned in previous episodes that I'm a new series fan, so any more new series content is more than welcome. But yeah, to kind of in a series like this, to have Joe Martin's fugitive Doctor, especially a Doctor that we don't know fit in, the only Doctor that we know doesn't fit in the timeline, because obviously the classic Doctors and then the new series Doctors, including the War Doctor, and we know exactly where their story starts and finishes, and it's just a bit in the middle that has wiggle room. Whereas Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor, we have no idea if she was a Doctor before and who she regenerates into. We don't know any of that, so it is very interesting. But we then move on to episode 2 of Rutans versus Sontarans, which releases in May 2026 and is titled Rendition, with the following synopsis. At the edge of the Sontaran-Rutan War, a large medical ship lingers in space. The Doctor and his friends find a group of strange survivors aboard, planning something unusual to save their commander. What new powers do the Rutans possess? What secrets do the Lockhart hold? As the conflict creeps closer, the Doctor must work out how to rescue those no longer versed in war. This episode was recorded on the 17th of November 2025, so not that long ago, considering, and stars Michael Troughton as the second Doctor, Fraser Hines as Jane Ruckerman, and Wendy Bradbury as Zoe Herriot. This episode was written by Tim Foley. Just a reminder, Rutans vs. Sontarans rendition releases in May 2026. We then move on to Rutans vs. Sontarans episode 3, titled Grave Moon, which will be released in June 2026, written by Lizzie Hopley. Has the following synopsis. The Doctor and Perry track a criminal imposter to a moon sanctuary of healing ponds, only to discover the lone Rutan the Doctor has previously met trapped in a self-made web of lies. Experiments to rejoin the host have forged a bond with grieving pond farmer Uland. As their mutual obsession tightens, so Uland's ponds grow more polluted and their farm cut off from what is really happening on the moon. A full-on Rutan invasion. As the Doctor and Perry strive to flee Melmuth and Uland from each other and other Doctors that work close by with far-reaching plans of his own for the lone Rutan. This episode was recorded on the 30th of October 2025 and stars Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor and Nicola Bryant as Perry Brown. So obviously we've got the return of the 6th Doctor in a mini-series like this, obviously featured in Sontarans vs. Rutans as well. So it is nice to have a mixture of both Doctors that weren't in Sontarans vs. Rutans and some that were. So we now move on to the finale of Sontarans vs. Rutans, titled Peace at Last, which will release in July 2026 and is also written by Tim Foley as the second episode, starring the second Doctor was. And here is the synopsis. On the precipice of peace it stands after the destruction of a major stronghold. The Sontarans propose something extraordinary, more extraordinary still. The Rutans say yes. The Doctor, Charlie and Chris are on hand to watch history being made. Yet history has other ideas. A plan has taken centuries is about to come to fruition. The Melmoth is returning. This episode was recorded on the 19th of January 2026, so just over a month ago. Well, basically a month since this episode was announced. Since I'm recording this episode is what I mean. And just before I think this series was announced as well. And stars Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, India Fisher as Charlie Pollard, and Conrad Westmus as Chris. So obviously this is a return of this team from Sontarans vs. Rutans, featuring the first episode titled The Battle of Giants Causeway, and obviously the finale of Rutans vs. Sontarans here titled Peace at Last. So just a reminder that Rutans vs. Sontarans will have an episode released between April and July 2026, which might explain why the Second Doctor Adventure has been pushed back by a month from July to August 2026 in case there's some overlap or whatever. So without further ado, let me know what you thought of Sontarans vs. Rutans if you've listened to it, as well as what you are hoping to expect from Rutans versus Sontarans when it is. I kind of merged them there when they're released between April and July 2026, and you haven't listened or got any thoughts on any of those, please let me know what you thought of this recap. And without further ado, I will see you in a future episode of the podcast. See you then. Goodbye.